Welcome back. The killing of Iran's supreme leader and the rapid escalation between Washington, Israel and Tehran marks an unprecedented moment of tension. Well, let's get more now on the legal basis and political risks for President Trump. We're joined by Dr. Todd Belt, who is a professor and director of the political management program at George Washington University. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Dr. Belt. Let me start by asking you, how is this playing out in the United States? How much support is there for President Trump's decision to engage militarily with Iran?
Well, thanks for having me on. It's great to be with you again, and greetings to all of your viewers. There has been a bit of resistance, even from Donald Trump's own party, over this attack. Now, according to the War Powers Act of 1973, the president can only put U.S. forces into harm's way if he gets a declaration of war, direct statutory authority, that is what both President Bush's got for the Iraq wars, or if there's an emergency caused by an attack on the United States. Now, there hasn't been an attack on the United States, and a lot of people are saying enough is enough. And there are some from his own party, including Thomas Massie in the House and Rand Paul in the Senate, who are co-sponsoring pieces of legislation that would say that if Donald Trump wants to continue any sort of military action in Iran, he would need congressional authority to do so.
Okay, and the fact that he hasn't got congressional approval, is that something that could come back to haunt President Trump, do you think?
Well, here's the real rub with this, and that is that to get this vote, they need a simple majority. It's called a privileged motion, which means you can't filibuster it. But if they get that vote, and I don't know if they will, because usually when presidents use force, their own party lines up behind them. With the exception of these one or two, I don't know that you're going to get too many other Republicans voting for it. But there are some Democrats who would vote for it who are strongly pro-Israel. So I don't know if it passes, but if it does, the same thing will happen when they pass a similar one in 2020 after the assassination of Qasem Soleimani, which is Donald Trump will veto it. And so if Donald Trump vetoes it, then you need 2/3 of both chambers to go back, and you're probably not going to get that. So it's largely symbolic.
Okay, I mean, President Trump obviously came to power and campaigned on an America First platform. I mean, does this decision to engage militarily with Iran not contradict that, or is President Trump able to position this as being an America First sort of a decision?
Yeah. Well, that's exactly right. I mean, you have a lot of people in the Republican Party who are America Firsters who are saying they feel betrayed by Donald Trump. This is not how he campaigned. He campaigned as an isolationist. He said he was going to focus on America first and not getting involved in these forever wars. People like Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene are really calling him out on this. And you have to believe that there are some voters who are really upset with this type of turn of events. And some people are saying, look, Donald Trump, you're chasing this Nobel Peace Prize and you're getting involved in Venezuela, potentially Cuba, and now Iran. This isn't what we voted for. So this could come back to haunt him.
Okay, and of course, this is an important year, isn't it, in the United States? The midterms are, 9 months away, 8 months away. I mean, could this end up hurting the GOP's chances politically?
In the midterm elections, the president's party usually loses about 26 seats. So Donald Trump is not already in a very good position looking at this. But presidents are usually graded by the voters on how they have handled the economy and other aspects of the presidency. And this is going to be a referendum on Donald Trump. Foreign policy usually isn't one of the things that's top of mind for voters. But if you think about how Donald Trump has been governing in a way that is, very disruptive and not very predictable, this might be some of the concerns that people have.
I mean, if President Trump can deliver, and when I say deliver, the full stopping of Iran's nuclear program, successful change of leadership or regime, or however we want to call it, in Tehran, I mean, that would go down in history, wouldn't it? And if he can deliver that in time for the mid-elections, wouldn't that give him quite a big boost?
It would be really spectacular. Obviously, Donald Trump is emboldened by the fact that he was able to essentially decapitate the regime in Venezuela with a very quick strike and moving on. If he thinks he can do the same in Iran, I don't know if that's really possible. we have seen other attempts to try to get regime change in other places that haven't worked. And if you're just doing it with air power and saying to the people, okay, it's your turn now, there's no guarantee that they're going to give you the type of regime that you want.
Okay. I mean, I just want to ask you how we went so quickly from diplomacy that, some of the noises coming out of Geneva were pretty positive earlier on last week, and we went all the way to military strikes within a very short space of time. How did that happen?
Yes, we did have some advances being made in the diplomacy, and it sounded really good last week. But then we have the strike. It was sort of similar to when Donald Trump last year, with the strikes on the nuclear facility, says it will happen within 2 weeks, and then he did it the next day. And here we have some information that is actually coming out that said that it was really a target of opportunity because they found out through Israeli intelligence that a lot of the high level government officials and military officials would be in the same place, and they wanted to be able to make that strike and moved everything around that.
Do you think diplomacy ever really stood a chance? Some are saying it was just a cover to buy time.
It possibly was. Donald Trump likes to think of himself as a deal maker, though. I think he might have preferred getting some sort of deal that would have been better than what Barack Obama had. There was also the issue of the United States saying that they would supply the uranium to Iran for their medical and peaceful uses, and Iran said they didn't want that. So that some people think that's exactly where the turn was. But I think Donald Trump would have preferred a diplomatic solution. But I think he was also compelled by the fact that the Israelis were saying this is really what we have to do and have to do it now.
Right. So you're saying that visit by the Israeli Prime Minister to Washington in February was perhaps the pivotal moment in President Trump's decision-making process.
Yes, what we're understanding from that visit is that Netanyahu said something to the effect that they were going to strike to finish off the job that they had started last year. And you're either going to do it with us or without us. And obviously, Donald Trump wanted to be part of it.
Russia and China have condemned the killing of the supreme leader of Iran. They've also condemned US-Israeli actions of the last 2 days. How should we interpret their positioning, Dr. Belt?
I'm sorry, this is the positioning of Russia and
China.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Obviously, Russia and China have a pretty good relationship with Iran. One of the things that we know Iran was going to do was purchase some fighter jets as well as some anti-aircraft missiles from Russia, and we know that was going to happen within the next couple of years, which probably would have sped up the attack calendar here as well. And of course, China is a big recipient of Iranian oil, and so the fact that they have such good relations, obviously, they're going to come to the aid of someone that they think is one of their allies.
So you're saying you can see a scenario in which the Chinese and or the Russians, by the way, they carried out military drills, joint military drills only last week. Do you see them coming to Iran's aid in their hour of need?
I don't necessarily see them coming to Iran's aid, and especially with things going the way they are with the overwhelming use of force from the United States and Israel, I don't think either China or Russia want to step in militarily. There are other ways that they can be involved, of course. And when you think of China and Russia, you have to think of cyber attacks. And I think that is probably the most likely way they would be involved.
Do you see Iran's friends, their proxy groups in the region, whether they're in in Iraq, in Lebanon in the form of Hezbollah, in Yemen in the form of the Houthis? Do you see any of those groups playing a meaningful role at this particular juncture?
Yeah, I think particularly the Houthis, they're actually in a better position to launch attacks than Hezbollah, which has been pretty decimated by the Israelis. I would think that we would get some attacks, and in fact, here in the United States, the Department of Homeland Security is saying that a number of our large cities need to be prepared in case something happens here. But of course, it's easier to do it over there, and I would think that you might get some more attacks on shipping, like we saw from the Houthis.
Right. So when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz, what do you see happening there, and what sort of an impact do you see that having?
Well, of course, the Strait of Hormuz is very narrow, and a lot of shipping has to get through there. One of the things Donald Trump said they were targeting is they wanted to, quote, obliterate the navy that Iran has. So obviously, this is a very big concern. Obviously, shipping that goes through the Strait of Hormuz is within striking range of those drones that Iran has shown that they have been very successful at producing. So you have to be concerned that that is a very critical area and something that the United States wants to lock down if they can.
Do Israel and the United States look quite isolated at the moment internationally, or do you see their allies slowly coming to the table, coming forward in support?
Well, it's really telling that earlier last week we saw the United Kingdom said that they would not allow the bases in Diego Garcia to be able to be used for any sort of military sorties coming out of there, and they didn't want to use any of the bases in England itself to help the United States. So that shows you there wasn't a lot of support coming in. But once the bombs start falling and you have to line up on one side or the other, things can change. And I presume that there is a strong diplomatic effort going on to try to convince traditional U.S. allies to get on board with the United States. So it doesn't look like it's U.S. and Israel against the world, as it often does in some of those United Nations votes.
Just lastly, Dr. Belt, where do you see this heading to? Are there any obvious off-ramps at this stage, or is it still too early?
That's really interesting because we heard from Oman that Iran is interested in de-escalation talks. So we've heard that the Israelis want to ramp things up for the next week. Donald Trump hasn't said exactly how much more he is prepared to do militarily, but we know there is a diplomatic off-ramp if Israel and the United States want to take it. The question is, do they have the will, or are they happy with the successes they've had so far in the bombing campaigns?
Okay, well, we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. Dr. Todd Belt, Professor and Director of the Political Management Program at George Washington University. Thank you very much indeed for your time, sir.
Thank you so much for having me on.